Turning now to the escalating tensions with North Korea, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and Defense Secretary James Mattis are meeting with top Chinese officials in Washington today. This comes after President Trump claimed China tried and failed to curb the North's nuclear threat. That statement came after the death of American student Otto Warmbier, who was detained and brutalized in Pyongyang. CBS News White House and Foreign Affairs correspondent Margaret Brennan is following the latest from the North Lawn. Margaret, President Trump has called North Korea America's most urgent foreign threat. What's likely the next diplomatic step in addressing Kim Jong-un's ongoing provocations?
Well, North Korea is at the very top of that meeting. You just saw the very top item for President Trump's top national security advisors. Not only was his top generals advising him, but also you have top diplomats in that room. And what they're trying to do is ramp up pressure and convince the Chinese to go along with the U.S. request to sign on to more aggressive sanctions on Pyongyang, hitting some of their leadership, really tightening the screws on their availability to touch their bank accounts outside of North Korea in a way that could further isolate its leadership and perhaps get them to ultimately agree to negotiate away the nuclear weapons that it appears Kim Jong-un thinks are key to him remaining in power. So they're really trying to change the calculus in North Korea, and you can see visibly the frustration of the Trump administration that this hasn't happened, and certainly hasn't happened in a way that matches the president's warm rhetoric in the past towards China's leader Xi Jinping. Remember that Mar-a-Lago summit where the president really described him as his good friend and that China was going to take care of this problem for the U.S., something that past presidents have also tried to do and really haven't been successful at getting China to completely change their position here. They remain North Korea's top patron. You saw President Trump overnight tweet something that has raised many eyebrows, starting to suggest that he might be giving himself some flexibility here to show that he is not just frustrated with China, but may take unilateral action and roll out some of those tougher sanctions, even if Beijing objects to it.
So despite these tweets, if China isn't going to pressure North Korea, what are President Trump's aides advising him to do besides tweeting?
Well, you see some Chinese pressure, but the problem is that both the U.S. and China have different outcomes that they want to see. Beijing fundamentally does not want to see any kind of instability on their shared border with North Korea. They want to manage an ongoing problem. What you hear from the Trump administration is they want a solution to the problem. They want to eliminate that nuclear threat. A peace treaty for them isn't good enough, even though Beijing wants that direct negotiation and peace treaty that perhaps this new president in South Korea that Norah O'Donnell recently spoke to might go along with. The Trump administration takes a tougher line, saying the nuclear weapons need to no longer be a threat for anyone in the region. So diplomacy, there still are options here. It's just, frankly, how much more room to run is there in terms of the financial pressure that can be exerted? It doesn't seem that the Trump administration wants to really waste a lot of political capital in taking some hardline positions like trying to kick North Korea out of the United Nations or some of these ideas that have been floated. But they do want to see real action, and they know that hitting in the pocketbook is something that could and has gotten the attention of North Korean leadership in the past. It's just a question of whether the Chinese leadership is willing to raise the temperature like that by directly putting screws to the leadership that they have in many ways been aligned with.
Margaret, I also want to ask you about Jared Kushner's trip to Israel, where he's been tasked to kickstart peace talks between the Israelis and Palestinians. What can Kushner possibly try to do that's different than past administrations?
Well, look, this is one of the toughest issues that any experienced diplomat could face, and you have fresh blood in here. Jared Kushner, some, jokingly refer to him as the Secretary of Everything because his portfolio is so wide-ranging, but he is one of the president's closest, very top advisors, and he also has a family history having deep ties to the current Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. Jared Kushner's father, who was a very prominent Democratic funder in the past, past, a businessman, also was very much a financial supporter of many Israeli causes. So he does have that personal relationship, but what he's also working on is building credibility with Palestinian leaders. So we know that he is in Israel not only to meet with Benjamin Netanyahu, but will also be meeting with Palestinian leadership as he tries to jumpstart peace talks that frankly have been stalled for a very long time. I spent a lot of time in the region traveling with the last administration as they tried to do this very same thing. Perhaps this new blood and these personal relationships could make a difference. So far, they have not. And in fact, you saw Israel break ground on their first settlement, a Jewish settlement in the occupied West Bank in 25 years on the eve of Jared Kushner's visit. So Benjamin Netanyahu, up to this point, does not seem to be listening to President Trump's request to hold back on those settlements, which are making it harder to get the Palestinians to agree to begin negotiations.
Absolutely. Margaret Brennan, thank you so much.